Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my full review of the Zmf Verite open back headphone. And it's been a while since I did my first impressions. In fact, it's been about 2 months, and sorry it's been so long, but the truth is, it's been a really hard headphone for me to review, and I'll get into that in a couple minutes. I'll tell you why that is. First of all, I wanted to say that this was loaned to me by Matthew Stringer, and he's loaned me another headphone before this. But anyway, he doesn't sell headphones or anything. He's just one of my subscribers has sent this to me to listen to and review, and I really appreciate that. And I just want to say sorry that I've had this for about 2 months now, and I will get it shipped back to you as soon as I get this review done. So anyway, this headphone is made in the USA, and it retails at $24.99. And I did make a mistake in my first video. I thought that this was made of silk wood, and apparently this is a special limited edition, this particular headphone. And this one was made of camphor burl wood, and this particular headphone sold for $26.99. This is a limited edition. It also, besides from the camphor burl wood, it has a rose gold grills and rods on it. You can probably see that if I get the angle right. I think in this light they're going to look almost silver or aluminum, but they do have a nice rose color to them. Anyway, this headphone is a wired, full-size, over-the-ear, open-back design, and it does use a dynamic driver that is, according to ZMF, a vapor-deposed beryllium driver made of 20% beryllium. This headphone has an impedance of 300 ohms, so it is, a high impedance headphone, and those usually work well with tube amps, and that turns out to be the truth. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So anyway, it has a sensitivity of 97 decibels at 1 milliwatt, so even though it's 300 ohms, it's actually fairly easy to drive. The weight is listed by ZMF at being 450 grams. Well, I pointed out in my first video, my first impressions, that this one weighed in at 517 grams, quite a bit heavier. Well, I found out that's because of the wood type that's used. It's because of the camphor burl wood, which is a harder, more dense wood. The ear cups are made entirely of wood. It's machined out of a solid piece of wood. It's not a veneer. It's not plastic covered with wood. It's just all wood. The ear pads are made of lambskin, and I believe that the headband is also lambskin. This came with 2 pairs of ear pads, and in my first video I had what's called the Universe pads on it, and I'll show you those in a second. I'll show them to you right now. This comes with 2 pairs of ear pads. The one is the Universe, and this is the Universe, and they're pretty thick. It's the thicker of the 2 ear pads. Both sets of ear pads are made of lambskin leather. They're both perforated. They both have the same shape, except the Universe pads are a little bit thicker and have a little bit more taper on them. And this is what was on the headphone when I received it, and this is what I did most of my listening with this ear pad. But as I promised in my first video, I would try the other ear pads, which are called the Verite ear pads. And that's what's on the headphone right now, and they look pretty much the same, perforated and all that. They're just a little bit thinner and have a little bit less taper front to back. They still have a little bit, but not as much. So anyway, while I'm showing you this, I'll show you the whole headphone. I'll give you a close-up view here of these beautiful grills, the wood. This is an open back design. The grills are open, plus they have several ports, 5 I believe, around the outside here, and then around the outside edge, all the way from the front, all the way around the top and around the back. They are ported, so they're heavily ported and very open, but that seems a little bit strange to me because it almost sounds like a semi-open back headphone. They do actually have a little bit of isolation, keep out some of the outside noise from coming in, and they don't let a whole lot of inside music out either. So very substantial porting, but yet to me it almost feels like a semi-open back headphone. But Zmf does sell a closed back version of this, so this is their open back version. This headphone comes with a detachable cable. Oh, I didn't want to show you. I wanted to show you that the rods here are adjustable. It's click stops, and then you've got a swivel on the yoke. Then they also swivel this way and this way, and I did out here on the bottom you can see that this uses 4-pin mini XLR connections for the headphone cable, which is very nice because it's universal and I can switch. I've got some Kennerton cables around, and the cable that came with this is a single-ended 6.3mm connection, and I did have a nice Kennerton cable with a 4-pin XLR connection at the amp end that I was able to use with this headphone to use it from the balanced output of a couple of my amps. So but anyway, this is the cable that comes with it, and once again 6.3mm or 1/4 inch connection at the amp end, and then you can see here we've got our 4-pin mini XLRs at the headphone end, and this cable is actually about 10 feet long. I think it's 3 meters, so that works out pretty close to about 10 feet, and it's got kind of a rubberized material. It's not great. I would prefer a cloth covering, but it's not bad, and it's flexible and it doesn't make any noise rubbing on itself, so I have no real complaints about the cable. Came with a little bag here to keep the cable in, and I did want to show you the case that this came in because it's actually very nice. I think I showed this in my first video, but anyway, it's a hard case. It's similar to the Pelican cases or the Harbor Freight cases that I've done a video on, but it's actually nicer because it has some a couple of latches here with knobs. You can turn those and lock it. So it's actually a very nice case. Try to show you the inside here, and you got your foam padding all the way around, and it should keep your headphones safe. And I'm sure this is strong enough that I could stand on it. I won't do that because it's borrowed, but anyway, I did test the Harbor Freight cases by standing on them, though. This is a little bit deeper, a little taller top to bottom than the Harbor Freight cases, but otherwise about the same shape. But should keep your headphone very safe. Dust proof, probably, I'm assuming that's waterproof and impact resistant. So anyway, I wanted to talk, before I got into the sound of this headphone, I wanted to talk a little bit about the equipment I use. Excuse me a second. To start with, my clean power was provided by Core Power Technologies, and my source was a Cambridge Audio CD player used as a transport only, and that was into either the Benchmark DAC1 or the IFI or iFi Neo IDSD DAC. So I used a digital signal from my transport to the 2 DACs, and then the amps that I used while reviewing this headphone, and I used a lot of them. I switched around, and to tell you the truth, this headphone works with just about any amp. It's not especially power hungry, and it does scale with a better amp, but it's not hugely dependent on the amp. It just pretty much sounds good whatever you plug it into. So anyway, the amps that I used were the Audio GD Master 9, the Topping A50S, the iFi Zendeck, and the iFi IDSD. That's the Neo IDSD. Excuse me. I also used the Felix Audio Echo, which is an OTL Type 2 amp. The Burson Conductor 3 Reference Edition, which I just got in, just a few days ago, maybe about 3 or 4 days ago. And also the Waveborn Edelweiss 3, which is also an OTL Type 2 amp, and I've had that in for a couple weeks now. So tried this headphone out with a lot of amps, and like I said, sound good with all of them, but I think it sounded its very best with the Felix Audio Echo. It just sounded incredible with that amp. Not sure why. It's a high impedance headphone, and high impedance headphones seem to match up well with OTL Type 2 amps, so I guess it's pretty obvious why it sounded good. So anyway, then a couple of headphones that I did compare this to directly was the LSA HP2, the LSA HP Diamond, and the Kennerton Valley, which is the original version, and the Kennerton Odin, which is a 2019 version, and the Kennerton Woden. And so I did do some pretty extensive comparisons back and forth. So getting into the sound, I guess the first thing that I would describe this headphone as is it's not really neutral. It's definitely on the bassy side of neutral, and it's definitely on the warm side of neutral, but that depends on which ear pads you use. If you use the Verite pads, which I have on it right now, it's closer to neutral, still has a bit of an emphasis in the bass, but other than that small emphasis, maybe I'd say maybe a 4 or 5 decibel emphasis in the bass, it's pretty close to neutral. The treble, the upper treble seems to roll off just a little bit, but not much. I said in the first video it did, but when I put more listening time on this, I don't really think it does. It does have pretty good sparkle up in the mid treble, especially. It has. It's not rolling off much at all. So anyway, but with the other ear pads, the Universe, it definitely has more bass using these. Definitely more mid bass, more sub bass, and a little more punch to it, and a little bit warmer sound. It makes the mids and sound a little bit more distant than the Verite pads. Anyway, getting into the imaging, I would say the imaging is precise. It's very easy to locate the instruments, where everything's coming from. The separation is good. Nothing blurs together. Everything's coming from its own place. I can hear each instrument separate, and the soundstage is unique on this. And the soundstage, it's not the widest, and I said in my first video that the soundstage was actually a little bit on the narrow side. Well, I need to explain that a little bit, because some of the instruments are out pretty far. It's not the widest soundstage. I mean, there's definitely headphones out there with a wider soundstage, but the vocals, especially female vocals, seem to be focused in the middle. They seem to be right there in the middle, where some of the headphones I compared it to, say the Kennerton Odin, the female vocals are wider and more wrapped around my head, where the Verite, they're more centered in the middle. And with the thicker pads, The universe pads are even more centered, it seems. It seems like with the thinner pads, it's a little bit wider slightly. But what is strange about the soundstage on these, it's kind of unique to anything I've heard, is even though it's not the widest, it has very good depth. And for some reason, at times I actually hear sounds that almost sound like they're coming from behind my head. Okay, some of the other headphones I've listened to, you know, the soundstage will have depth and it'll go this way. Well, this has a little bit of depth there. The vocals seem to be a little further away from me than on some other headphones, but they also have depth going back this way, and I swear sometimes I actually hear sounds that come from in back of my head, almost to the point I turn around and look. And I have not heard another headphone that does that, and I'm not sure why it does that, but it's pretty cool. I like it a lot. I mean, it just really gives a lot of depth to the soundstage, and it takes away a lot of that just left and right sound. You know, the sound really sounds like it's coming from all the way around my head, even above my head sometimes. And I've heard other headphones that'll put the sound stage up above my head, but I've never heard a headphone that wraps it around the back the way it does. So detail wise, this headphone has very good detail and very good clarity, but it's not the absolute last word. And that's where this headphone became a little bit difficult for me to review, and I'm going to try to explain that the best I can, because when I did my first impression on this, I didn't really compare it to anything else. And when I listened to this headphone, I absolutely loved it. I loved everything about the sound of it. And at times I was listening to certain groups, and this, first of all, this headphone works with a wide variety of different types of music, but it is especially good, and it's probably because it's got a strong bass. It's especially good for rock and pop and electronic types of music. So anyway, some of the things I was listening to, I was just sitting there thinking to myself, this is probably the best I've ever heard this sound. And a few examples would be, I was listening to some old Fleetwood Mac, and I just thought, wow, this just sounds really, really good. Okay, then I was listening, I tried some Metallica, some harder stuff with harder bass, some Tool. I tried some grunge, like what was I listening? What the what is the name of that band? I can't think of it right now. I'll come up with it in a minute. Stone Temple Pilots was one of them. What was the big grunge band back then? Pearl Jam. That's the one I'm trying to think of. Anyway, it sounded really good. I pulled out some 80s new wave. I don't know how many of you remember the Thompson Twins, but their music just had a million things going on at once in every direction, you know, bells and chimes and drums and everything. And I was listening to that, and seriously, I thought it was probably the best I've ever heard it sound. And these are songs that I've heard thousands of times. Okay, so here comes the problem. When I listened to this before I compared it to any other headphones, I loved it. Okay, then I did some comparisons to a few other headphones, and it seemed to come up a little bit short in a few ways. And it didn't have any major flaws, didn't have any major shortcomings, but it just seemed to come up a little bit short in several different categories. Okay, first was the mid-range, the upper mids sounded just slightly a little bit veiled and a little bit distant compared to some headphones like the LSA HP Diamond or the Kennerton Woden, which are actually two very similar headphones. But the detail and clarity just wasn't quite there compared to the Kennerton headphones. Okay, then the soundstage. The soundstage sounded a little bit narrow compared to some of the other headphones, and in fact compared to most of them. And then The strong point of this headphone is it has excellent bass. It has especially with the thicker, with the, what are these? The Universe pads. And I think that Universe is short for Universal, but anyway, with the Universe pad, it has a very strong mid bass, okay? Definitely stronger than the Kennerton Woden or the LSA HP Diamond, but it still wasn't as strong as the Kennerton Valley, and I'm talking the old original version. The original version has even more punch and more dynamic mid bass than this does. But yet this has a lot of things the Valley doesn't have. The LSA HP2, which is a closed back, actually goes deeper and has better sub bass than this headphone. So this headphone has a lot of things that comes up a little bit short when compared to several other different headphones. So I was trying to figure out why I loved it so much. And like I said, usually, I'm really crazy about, ultra detail, ultra clarity, and it doesn't really have that. Okay, I really like a large, wide sound stage. It doesn't really have that. It has really good bass, but it's not the hardest hitting. At times it can sound a little bit soft and lack impact, and it's not the absolute tightest bass, even though it was tighter than some other headphones in similar price range like the Meza Empyrean. It's got about the same level of bass, but it's a little bit tighter than the Empyrean. And so anyway, this is what was so hard about reviewing this headphone. I kept trying to figure out why is it I like this headphone so much, because every time I listen to it, I love the way it sounds. And I guess it's just because it doesn't, even though it comes up a little bit short in a lot of spots when compared to other headphones, it doesn't have any major flaws. And it's just overall a really good headphone in my opinion. I mean, it's warm, it's bassy. When I'm listening to it, until I compare it to something else that's a little more detailed, I don't miss that detail. And the width of the soundstage, it's made up for by the depth that circles around my head. I mean, I just really enjoy that. And this headphone is forgiving of less than perfect recordings. It works with just about any kind of music. And it's absolutely zero fatigue. As far as listening fatigue, it's never harsh. It's not analytical where it just wears you out after a while. This is a headphone I can listen to for hours. It's just probably the most pleasant headphone I've ever heard to listen to, as far as just not wearing you out. And something I did forget to talk about a little bit is the comfort of this headphone. It is a little bit on the heavy side, and I've told you before in my videos that the weight of a headphone usually doesn't bother me, okay? But this headphone, it just fits really well, it sits really well, and it does not feel heavy to me. It is actually very comfortable. The pads are super soft, and they're roomy inside, and the headband is comfortable. And I have absolutely no issues with this headphone as far as comfort, except for one thing I did mention in my first video, is that the clamping force was just a little bit tight as far as I was concerned. And I do have some issues with TMJ in my jaw here, and after a while it can get a little bit uncomfortable on my jaw, on the joint there. So I have been told that you can stretch the band out a little bit, just bend a little bit, take the pressure off of it, which I'm not going to do. I didn't do, because this is a loaned headphone, and I would never, make any adjustments or do anything to a loaned headphone. So I'm tried to send it back exactly the way it came to me. So anyway, yeah, I started out listening to this headphone before I compared it to anything else, and I loved it. I compared it to a few other headphones and thought, well, it's not as great as I thought it was. But then, over the last, I've had this 2 months now, I've listened to it a lot. I've listened to a lot of different kinds of music. And there has never been a time that I didn't really enjoy it. So the fact is, it's not the most detailed headphone in the world. It lacks just a little bit of detail and clarity compared to some others. Doesn't have the hardest hitting bass, but it has very good bass. It's just a very well balanced, very well thought out, very refined headphone that I really like, and it turns out this is one of my favorite of any headphone I've ever heard. It's definitely up there at the top. And when it's time to send headphones back, which is going to be a couple days from now, this is going to be one of the hardest to give up and send back of any headphone I've ever listened to. So yes, I can definitely recommend this headphone. It's not the cheapest, but this is the build quality is outstanding. The appearance is outstanding. The comfort is very good and could be excellent if I probably did a little bit of adjustment on the headband. The sound, like I said, just one of the most pleasant all-around headphones I've heard. And like I said, it's got enough bass and that it's excellent with rock and pop and electronic, that sort of music. So yeah, I'm definitely like this headphone and can highly recommend it. So well, I'm gonna wrap this up. It's gotten pretty long. So once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I was just watching my first impressions video I did 2 months ago, and I welcomed you all to the Headphone Experience on Facebook, and I said we're at almost 10,000 members. Well, now 2 months later we're like at 11,300 the last I checked. So we've added about 1,500 members to our group in about the last 2 months. So we're really growing again. Kind of leveled off for a little while. Now we're growing. A lot of new people there, a lot of interesting posts. So I welcome you all to join us over there. And once again, thanks for watching my video.